Hi, I'm Ron Deal, owner of Garden South Landscape and Design. I think I'm officially the oldest landscaper in Athens, and that's uh, it got here really fast. Um, a lot of people will tell you I've been in it too long. So, um, Mark called me and told me he wanted me to do this, and he wanted me to talk about some of the things that you run into when you try to renovate an older garden at an older home or whatever. And and I said, yeah, I'll do it. And then he told me I had 15 or 20 minutes to do it. And y'all, I talk so slow. I don't know if I can explain anything in 15 or 20 minutes. So anyway, we'll get started and everything. Before I do, I realized when I was going through my things here that I made a mistake. And I'm not going to tell you what that is, but I know what it is. And if you pick it up, you just wave your hand, and I'll give you the Vince Dooley's gardening book. And Coach is a great friend of mine and Stewart's, and um, a fantastic gardener. And I used to be his horticultural consultant. Now I'm his yard boy because he knows everything. So anyway, you get a free book. Okay, so we better start. So this is how the story goes. You've got a beautiful home, a beautiful landscape, and you enjoy it a whole lot. You can flip on through a few.
You want me to go to the next one?
Yeah.
I have to open them each up.
Yeah.
Can you make it full screen again?
I can't because this is not PowerPoint. These are individual files, and so I have to click off of this. You want to do this? Okay. If you know how to do it better, I'm not high tech. And you want me to keep clicking?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this house is in the neighborhood here. Too far.
Okay.
Okay. But that's okay. But anyway, you've got a nice landscape and you enjoy it for years and years. And then one day when you're walking out of the house, toting the old bad wallpaper that you just ripped off that's been there for 20 years out to the trash, you look around the yard and say, you know, it looks a little tired. It could use some upgrading. And, you know, there's a lot of reasons that you might come up with that. You go to the next one that, you know, you may decide that you don't need the football field in the backyard anymore because your kids are 40 years old or whatever. Um, you may decide you'd rather have a patio. And that's an example of somebody that did that, not a normal one. You may decide that you'd like to be in the garden instead of just look in the garden. This is people walking around Coach Dooley's. You may decide you just need to modernize the house through the landscaping. Before we started this project, they had white lattice in between the things here. It was a real modern look and went real well. So anyway, you know, people look at it and say, I need something different. But when you start the process, there's all kind of things that you can run into when you're dealing with an old garden. And I've come up with, Mark, flip on through. Okay, I've come up with Ron's top 10 things you might have to handle when renovating an older landscape. And we'll get right into it. The first is drainage. That's exciting. One of the biggest things that I see in landscaping is over the years, the ground settles around the house. And this can happen over 20 or 30 years, and you never know it's happened until you have a problem or you get ready to renovate and you pull plants up and you break the ground up and you figure out the water is coming towards the house. And go ahead, Mark.
Next one.
Next one. This is just because I'm having to handle it now. The Zaxby's corporate office, their front office, over the years, it has settled about that much. And now we've got these hollies are dying, these boxwoods are dead now, and we're fixing to go in and renovate it. And it was time for a little renovation anyway, but it caused a huge problem with the plants. And we started doing some looking under the mulch and everything, and yeah, we had the settling there. I was there on the day they backfilled when they built the building, and I can understand because all kind of rocks went into the backfill and everything, and over time, it happens. Um, the next thing that you have to look out for is drainage patterns. And over the years, horrible things can happen with drainage patterns. So this is a yard that was in Oconee County, and it's probably one of the worst cases you can flip through, Mark. Uh, Water everywhere. It was downhill, and and trying to design a solution for that when it's a totally treed lot and everything, that can be a real headache. Turned out to be one that they to my knowledge they never did anything, but when you go when you try to do that, you can get into some problems. Uh, Man, you're fast.
I'm getting rid of all the pictures that I'm opening up.
He's,
This is not
he's
powerful.
only got about 100 of them on
Yeah,
there.
it's an
So
interesting process.
okay.
All
Uh,
right.
so you wanna look at what's happening to the water, and you want to be careful because there are some liabilities with it. If you've got a neighbor downhill and you do something to your property to change the water flow on their property, then you've got a problem. You need to know things like whose house was there first, where the water flow normally goes, and you can do things to control it without causing a problem next door. But I have seen some pretty critical things that have happened because of drainage that nobody knew there was a problem until a project was done, and then somebody calls up and their house is flooded. And that's not a really nice thing to have to deal with. Um, Another thing, existing drains. Does anybody know what a basement drain is? Basement drain is a drain that when the house is built, if you've got a basement, pipe is put in the ground around the basement and it's backfilled. And the idea is that if water goes in at the basement, it'll go into this pipe and empty into the backyard somewhere. What happens is nobody explains this to anybody. And when you bring equipment in, if somebody doesn't know about basement drains, they run over your basement drains. If they're actually working, then you get a good rain, it's stopped up, and where does the water stay? Right there at the house and into your basement. So I've seen that happen over and over again. Another thing, septic tanks and utilities and everything, the call before you dig thing, that's a real live thing that you need to do. Legally, I can't even dig a hole and plant an azalea without calling for a locate. And it takes them like 76 hours to come out and locate, so you have to think ahead a little bit. But a lot of people will say, I know there's nothing there. Well, there wasn't 30 years ago, but 40 years ago, before they moved in there was something there. And it's not a very happy day when you hit a gas line or, God forbid, a communications line. I've done that before and never do that again. So anyway, those are some of the things that you have to look out for, drainage wise. But you saw the slide that said drainage can be fun, and it can, because you can come up with all kind of neat ways to do it and aesthetically neat ways. Used to, all we had was the surge stone, the granite surge stone that the county would throw in ditches and everything. But now you can go in and you can buy stone, and you can create really nice dry streams and everything. And sometimes, a really good dry stream looks good, it looks natural, and nobody notices that there's no water in it. But then that's what it does when it does its job. It's very valuable when it's done right. I tell people that when we do a dry stream, most every rock is hand placed, and I sort of believe rocks have a place in the landscape, and if you talk to them enough, they'll tell you where they go.
There you go.
Another thing that you need to look for: property lines. Has anybody ever had a property line dispute? Another very unhappy thing. Um, you may you may think you know where your property line is, but before you do anything with a renovation or whatever, you need to be sure. Uh, I'll use myself as an example. At my present house, when we moved in, there was only one house on the street near us, and it was right next door. And we got along famously with the owners, and they were sort of plant people too. And we planted things together, crossing the property line and everything. Well, they moved. And one day, my new neighbor comes over, and we didn't get a we had a rough start. Let's just put it that way. But anyway, she said, "Your grape arbor down there is blocking my view of the river, and it's on my property." And I'm like, "Well, okay, but my daddy gave me those grapes, and I don't really want to dig them up and all that." Long story short, I come home. She's got the guy from the county there complaining to him about me planting over the property line. Well, a couple of days later, I come home and there's white stakes all the way down the property line. Well, my grape arbor was on her property. There was one post that was that far on her property. What she didn't know is the property line went that way further up, and I ended up with more land than I thought I had. And I've seen that happen several times. So, but anyway, those type things are not good. And now we're good friends. We made up and everything. So. But I've got one beautiful tree, Acer gricium, that is specimen, and it's 6 inches onto her property, and I hope she never. Okay, another thing you need. Oh, I got to mention this. The property line thing is really important. Like if you decide to plant bamboo, otherwise somebody will be doing their best Ernest T. Bass routine, throwing rocks at your house. But you got to be careful about that type thing. Um, Homeowners associations, I apologize, some things should not be abbreviated. And historical districts. Um, if you've ever dealt with a homeowner association, um, it can be a challenging thing. And but there are reasons for that and everything. So you need to just check it out and make sure that you sort of know the what can happen or what you have to do to get something approved, so that you're not getting a knock on your door and saying, you got to dig all this stuff out. I met somebody the other day at a little condo, and they came in, did a beautiful job of landscaping, had to rip it all out because they didn't go through the homeowners association, and that was sad. Historical districts, sometimes I call them hysterical districts, but historical districts, there's a lot of rules and regulations there. And if you've got a historical home, you need to be real careful on that one and make sure you jump through as many hoops as they need you to jump through. Uh, this is the Hardman Sam's house over on 255 Millage. And when we went in there, it was an old garden. You could tell it used to be a garden, but it wasn't. It was overgrown. It was horrible, and we were able to go in and completely redo the garden. But every step I took had to be okayed by the Historical Society and by the county. Um, just an interesting thing. This wall, we got it okayed, and I put it up, and they had to come over and inspect the lighting we were putting in. And the guy said, "This wall's in the wrong place." And I'm like, "Oh, that's where I told you we were going to put it." He said, "It's 10 feet too close in." And I thought they were going to tell us we had to tear it out, but they went back to the plans and they had actually signed off on it. So they had to leave it there. It's grandfathered in now. But anyway, you know, a lot of people say you can't do certain things in historical districts, but we were able to completely change this thing into a wedding venue, a very nice wedding venue. And you know, everything we did was in good taste, you know, and they can work with you if you sort of allow them to tell you what good taste is. Okay. Another thing, old irrigation. I don't have a slide for that one, Mark. Uh, a lot of places, when you get ready to renovate, you're dealing with 20, 25-year-old irrigation pipes and everything. Uh, my experience is at that age, you need to look seriously at whether you want to go ahead and redo at least part of it because things have changed a whole lot. Um, Number one, drought policies. And this week will make you think of if any of you were here back during the 3-year drought, one of the most horrible periods in our industry. And, uh, and some of the things we did, Stuart, you remember Clark County was not very cooperative with us, and we ended up going to the state. And when it was all over, drip irrigation, the EPD had uh, classified drip irrigation as a water conservation measure. So if we go into drought policies again, they cannot automatically shut the water off if you've got drip irrigation. So it's an important consideration if you're trying to figure out whether to do all underground irrigation or drip. And both of them have their pluses and minuses and everything. So, uh, new technology. You think that confuses me? Some of these irrigation clocks actually talk back to you and tell you what you're supposed to do. Um, they can be run by a phone and everything. And y'all, I'm too old to do that, but they can be done. And I've actually started subbing out. I've got an irrigation guy that I just let come in and do all my irrigation now because everything has passed me by. So another thing that's going on right now, we run into all the time is glue failure in pipes that have been in the ground for a long time. And if something all of a sudden you got a fountain in your front yard that wasn't there yesterday, a lot of times it's just the glue let go and the pipe separated and you got a problem. When you have glue problems, you might as well just figure that you're going to redo the irrigation. Uh, Next one is maintenance, and well, keep that there. Okay. Maintenance considerations. You know, on your next house, and Brad, you sort of covered all this and everything. How much grass do you want? How many rooms do you want in your garden? Um, what kind of plants do you want, and how much work do you want to do in your garden? I'm admitting this, okay? I was the first person in Athens or the surrounding area to use uh, pink blooming loropetalum on a job. And it was ruby loropetalum, which was the dwarf loropetalum back then. There were only like 3 different varieties. I've got a ruby 10 foot tall in my yard. Yeah. But I've, uh, it was 25 years ago. It was the first Zaxby's restaurant in Watkinsville, and that was only their second restaurant when they started. And I've worked for those guys for a long time now. But, uh, but yeah, I was the one that brought the loropetalums, and I sometimes I wish I hadn't have done it, you know, because God, they're everywhere, you know. But anyway, so maintenance, I'm big on pruning, and we prune a little different than the norm, but but I I try to train my guys not to take the hedge trimmers and make, you know, Durr would call them green meatballs, and so pruning with the right pruning regimen, you can plants will last a long time. Normal landscape, I would say, it's good for 20, 25 years. With the right kind of pruning, you can get 35 to 40 years out of it. But, but it takes, you know, a lot of pruning during the winter time to do that. Um, trees, trees grow. So what looked real pretty 20 years ago, it may look real pretty now, but you're not going to grow anything under it. And I talk to people a lot about doing, you know, losing battles is what I call them. Trying to plant grass under oak trees, sometimes trying to plant anything. There are a variety of things that can do, but one of my favorite things to do, if I've got a big area that I don't want to battle the oak tree roots or whatever, I'll put edging down, I'll put pea gravel down, and I'll get some beautiful pots and set them around and have fun planting in pots in areas like that. And that's landscaping too. So, um,
Next picture.
yeah, go to the next one. I don't know what it is, but okay, yeah, this is good. Um, okay, if a lot of people are going to hire somebody to come and do their landscaping, and one of the things that you need to be aware of is our industry has changed a whole lot. You know, Stuart, how many landscapers, when you first got into the business, how many landscapers were in Athens, Georgia?
There were a bunch. It depends on what you want to classify as a landscape.
Well, I'm talking about real landscapers. I can count 5 in the whole Athens area. You know, now there's, you know, probably thousands. I don't know. But anyway, you need to know that all it needs to be a landscaper, all you need is a pickup truck, a wheelbarrow, and and if somebody calls themselves a landscaper, and one of my pet peeves, lawn maintenance is not landscaping; it's lawn maintenance. So if you see landscaping on a truck, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. So anyway, you just have to be careful because I can guarantee you when this guy had this wall built, the man that built it told him, I know how to do that. Well, he did know how to build it, but he didn't know how to make it last. He didn't know anything about footings or anything like that. And that's what you get. You know, those kind of things. You can go through Oconee County, some of these really nice neighborhoods where they've got columns and fences and everything, and you can see that column tilting. And that's because the people that did it didn't understand that you have to have a certain size footing under it to hold the weight. And they just poured some concrete and built it and walked away. The next thing, so anyway, just be reliable in everything. Just look for reliable people. Um, ask a few questions because they're, you know, there's all kind of people that have been told, I know how to do that. And I run into it a good bit. Okay, another thing, aesthetics. You know, nowadays, landscaping has changed, and I think back in the day, it wasn't unusual to have a flat yard and just a lot of missed opportunities, I think. But now we've figured out how to use elevation changes and everything, nice walls, patios on the side of a hill, koi ponds. I mean, so much, and all it takes is a little bit of imagination, and you've got all kind of choices and everything, and you know, you can just do a whole lot.
Number 10.
The last thing on number 10, Okay, it's about the plants, stupid. Now, I'm not calling y'all stupid, okay? But I got to tell you, and this happened back during the 3-year drought. We couldn't plant a whole lot of bushes back then. So we had to do hardscapes. That's when I really learned how to do paper patios and rock walls and things like that. And I was miserable during that time because what I really am is a plant freak. And that's what I enjoy. And it finally occurred to me why I was so miserable. I think it's about the plants, stupid. And one of the things that I hate about today's world and and a lot of my competitors, not all of them, but a lot of them, they don't know their plants. They're not in love with plants, and you can look at their jobs and you can tell that, they're just not into plants. I'm into plants. And any of my landscapes, and you can just go through. This is a teacher's garden at Athens Academy we did, and it started off with um, almost nothing. There was a little building there that looked like a Japanese building, and we just sort of. There's so many different kind of plants there, it's amazing. But koi ponds and everything, the things you can do with them is just fantastic. Uh, Look at all you can appreciate this, all the shapes of the plants and everything. Um, Landscaping can be so much fun. Uh, I do a lot of water features. Plants and water go together, so just keep on going through, Mark. Okay, I got to tell you this story. Okay, anybody know what's in that building? A what? No, ma'am. It's a well. It's at Coach Dooley's house, and we had a well put in for him. And they have the big blue tank that goes in, and they put the big blue tank there. And Barbara comes down the driveway, pulls into the garage, and comes out. Vincent, what the hell is that big blue tank? And he said, well, it's part of the well. She said, that's not staying there. And a couple of weeks later, he comes to see me, and he's got a picture. He said, do you know what a Japanese tea house is? I said, no, but I can find out. And he gave me a picture, and we ended up building that Japanese tea house over his well. And we've got it with a removable roof and everything. And I have to tell you, see the boulders there? Probably the ugliest boulders in the world. But they were out at the stone store, and I was out there one day, and the guy that ran the place, he pointed to those boulders. He said, do you want those? We'll never sell them. I said, well, I'll take them, but I got to wait for the right job. So I said, well, Coach Dooley's tea house is the right job. And I had the boulders delivered, put in his driveway, and he would walk by them, and he'd just look at them, and then he'd walk off. And it took him a couple of days to ask, what are these, and what are they doing in my yard? And I told him, I said, these are your boulders. He said, they don't look very good. I said, you just wait. I said, they're going to be fantastic. He said, well, I think that they're not very Japanese looking. And I'm like, have you ever heard of Mount Fuji? He said, yeah. I said, those boulders came from Mount Fuji. And so anyway, we put them in, and they worked perfectly and everything. And one day he was walking, some VIP that came in was touring his garden, and he stops and he says, you see those boulders there? They're from Mount Fuji. And,
All right.
okay.
Good. You did your 10.
Okay.
Do you want more to show?
Just run through them right quick. There's just a few before and afters and some that I want to make sure. Okay, this a ranch style house in Beechwood. Keep going. and we redid this one. You'll see at the very end. They had a slope lot going on. That's it. We put a bridge over to the front door. Just all kind of neat things. This is the people that own the Harmon Sam's house. This is their house over on Deering Street, and this is before. It was sort of ugly, and it had an old boxwood garden in it. This is today. We actually saved the boxwoods, dug them up, transplanted a lot of them, and redid the garden. One of the prettiest things, seashells in concrete. Wow. I'm from Savannah, so that was right up my alley. Artificial turf. Didn't want to have to bring a lawnmower in there. This is somebody that's on the front row here, and this is what we did with that mess. When I met with her, she wanted grass, didn't you? Wanted grass, but look what she got out of it. Another person that's in the audience here, Molly Justice, this is her house. Hers were the first pictures you saw, and she's done a wonderful job with it. And then the last one, a frog on a gator. So what can I say?